I declare an interest as a member of the Secondary Legislation Scrutiny Committee, and we're joined today by the Chair of our committee, Lord Hunt of Wirral, and I speak in a personal capacity. I concur with the report from our committee in respect of this legislation, and I know that the role of the committee is only to consider instruments laid before the House of Lords and to draw the House's attention to those that meet our reporting grounds, and then it is for the House to determine what further action is required. But, my Lords, with reference to this SI, and due to its controversial nature and the need for proper, adequate consultation, as has already been indicated by the Noble Lord Morrow, there needs to be consultation with schools, boards of governors, churches, in many instances, who own the schools. I would urge that the Minister brings forward the necessary legislation to push back the implementation date, to allow that consultation to take place. And I would ask the Noble Lord the Minister to give consideration to that. This would allow time for a public consultation and would ensure that the policy can be fully developed. And in fact, at the weekend, I did talk to one of the principals of a Catholic grammar school in Downpatrick, and obviously he was concerned about the outworkings of the action. He is fully cognizant of the fact that we now live in a more liberal world, and he feels that the content probably can be delivered in a way that is sensitive, but it would be preferable if there was consultation, therefore allowing for informed choices to be made. But, my Lords, the manner and content of these regulations suggests, I would contend, a level of arrogance on the part of the NIO and a total disregard for schools, parents and their management structures, many in the faith-based sector, and I feel that they've been treated with total ignominy. The Secondary Legislation Scrutiny Committee received representations from a broad range of bodies, including all the churches in Northern Ireland, the Catholic Schools Trustee Service, and I declare an interest as having been taught in the Catholic sector, Controlled Schools Support Council, the Right to Life UK, the Christian Institute and the Presbyterian Church, and the Transferors Representative Council, all raised several concerns which have been reflected in the SLSC submission to your Lordship's House. The lack of a public consultation prior to the regulations coming into effect have caused immense concern. The NIO told the committee in responses that there was no legal requirement to conduct a consultation. I would ask the question, why is that the case? But that it had engaged with a range of stakeholders and statutory organisations. I would ask the Noble Lord the Minister, what stakeholders and what statutory organisations and what responses did they receive? Were these responses published? What did those responses state? And was there engagement with those groups directly involved with young people? Teachers, parents, boards of governors, the controlling bodies and the churches. The SLSC, as the Noble Lord Morrow already refers to, concludes that given the controversial nature of this policy and the strong views expressed in submissions to the committee, a full public consultation would have been appropriate. The report also points out that other comparable policy changes, including when similar regulations were introduced in England, were subject to a public consultation before implementation. So therefore I ask the question, why no public consultation in Northern Ireland? Why was there no recognition of the need to work with all involved in delivering education, and particularly those in faith-based environments, particularly in Northern Ireland, where the subject of abortion is highly controversial? So therefore, why was there no recognition of the need to acknowledge and respect the ethos and faith-based nature of many of our schools. There is no doubt that a full public consultation can result in improved policy making, and sadly we are at variance in Northern Ireland with what happened in England. And if I could just quote from what the Catholic School Trustees Service said in their submission from Bishop Donald McKeown, who's the chair of that. We have a particular concern regarding the explanatory note to the regulations, which proposes a programme of RSE that does not advocate or promote any particular opinion. This requirement runs contrary to the very existence of a faith-based sector which is committed to an ethos, one which parents and carers have specifically chosen for their children. It further states, we would highlight the contrast between this legislative requirement and that which applies to schools in England. The House of Commons Library Report, RSE in Schools, England, 23rd of March 2023 notes, and I quote, schools will have flexibility over how they deliver these subjects so that they can develop an integrated approach that is sensitive to the needs of the local community. And as now, faith schools will continue to be able to teach in accordance with the tenet of their faith. Why are these rights passed overwhelmingly in 2019 in the House of Commons by approval of 538 MPs being denied to schools in Northern Ireland? And I think that noble lords from Northern Ireland need answers to that question. And the Catholic Church submission also says the guidance for England also makes explicitly clear that provision for RSE is set within the context of a school's broader ethos and approach to developing pupils socially, morally, spiritually and culturally. The requirements, my lords, set out in the legislation for Northern Ireland pose a very different and indeed contradictory approach to that approved for schools in England. And while the regulations were led by the NIO, much of the detailed implementation of the policy will fall to the Department of Education in Northern Ireland. And some aspects of the policy underpinning the regulations, including procedures to allow parents to withdraw their children from sexuality education, may not be developed by the policy implementation date of the 1st of January 2024, apparently. Maybe the Minister has a different view on that. This will be of concern to parents and would be useful if we get that issue fully teased out and answers on it. I believe parents have the right to choose what sort of sexual education their children should receive. The failure to respect the autonomy of parents in this sensitive area is alarming and contrary to any elementary concept of democratic choice. Would suggest the government should reflect on the European Convention, which states that in the exercise of education, the state shall respect the right of parents to ensure such education and teaching in conformity with their own religious philosophical convictions. To coincide with the trend of inadequate explanatory memorandums that we receive from other departments, and the chair of our committee will be fully aware of that, the NIO in their explanatory memorandum have stated that these regulations would have no significant impact on the private, voluntary or public sector. So I like to know from the Minister, how was that statement or how was that conclusion arrived at? On what basis was this assessment made? The Assembly and Executive is the rightful place to deal with such issues, and I hope that there is a restoration, and so therefore a pause would be suitable to allow a consultation which would then allow a reformed Assembly and Executive to formulate a policy with legislation in relation to sexuality matters, sexuality education matters, that is specific to Northern Ireland and takes on board the ethos and faith-based nature of many schools. This legislation places significant new responsibilities on boards of governors and principals. I feel it directly undermines the rights of parents and challenges the rights of trustees to promote that faith-based education. What training will be provided to schools, to boards of governors, to teachers? What funding will be provided during this time of difficult financial challenges for schools that we hear about on a day-to-day basis? I think, my lords, more thought and reflection is required, and I ask the Minister to give that further thought and reflection and to allow a consultation to take place and meetings to take place with all those involved to ensure that a policy is put in place that is fully reflective of the needs of all. Thank you.